views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers and journalists and editors and photographers and filmmakers and just about anybody who puts stuff out in the Bronx so you can get an idea of what they're thinking about. This evening, we're going to talk about a very important subject that a lot of people know a lot about, and that is the protest that kind of ended very badly at the beginning of June in Mott Haven. And we have, I think, the writer who did the best work on that, and you're going to get right inside as to what happened and what's happening now. And then the second part of our program, we're going to talk to an artist who has put out a beautiful new website, one of the most popular Bronx artists, and you're going to get to see his work in maybe a whole different way. But let's get started with Jake Offenhartz from Gotham. It's nice to have you with us, Jake. Thanks for joining us on the Bronx Buzz.
Thanks for having me.
Jake, I mentioned to you offline, and I just briefly mentioned, I thought your reporting on the Mott Haven Black Lives Matter protest that frankly went awry was outstanding. I mean, I don't know who else reported with such detail, complete with video. So congratulations for just being there at the right time in the right place and being able to report on something, as I said, that went badly. So great job.
It's a team effort, as you know.
Well, you know, we're all, believe me, I know doing television is like that. Just real briefly, so people will know who you are. Where are you from? Why'd you get into journalism, and how'd you land at Gothamist?
Yeah, sure. I was originally born in Manhattan. I grew up in Westchester, about 25 minutes north of Mott Haven. I've been at Gothamist since early 2017. Bounced around a little bit. I was reporting for the Village Voice. Had a couple freelance stories elsewhere. Actually started as an intern at Gothamist, so not like a super long resume beyond that.
What motivates you to do journalism? And looking at that, that'll lead right into this, because this is, I would think, right at the core of what a journalist wants to do.
Yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to just go outside and cover things like this. Ideally, things that are less violent a lot of times too. But yeah, I think I'm motivated by the same things all of us are, helping communities understand the places they live and the power structures above them, right?
Mm-hmm. Tell the stories, in essence. So on June 4th in Mott Haven, I think it was 136th Street, there was a Black Lives Matter protest. It seemed to be a peaceful protest. And then at 8 o'clock when the curfew hit, and I'm just going to tell it in general ways, the NYPD, the word they've been using is kettled in the protesters. And then really all mayhem kind of broke out. So why don't you describe briefly what you saw, and then we'll bring it up to date.
Sure. So yeah, this march had started at the Hub. They had walked sort of towards Willis and then down. They were on 136th, which is a narrow one-way street, and at Brook Avenue, which is the intersecting street there at the bottom of this hill, a line of heavily armored police officers with bikes sort of materialized very quickly as people were marching. There was a lot of confusion. I was near the front. I kind of saw that people didn't initially, a lot of times when you're about to get kettled, and this was not one of those cases. So there's a line of police officers. They're on their bikes. They're stopping people from crossing onto Brook Avenue. And all of a sudden they start heaving their bikes forward, and they're very dramatically shouting, "Move back," and people are kind of starting to move back.
Now, was this at 8 o'clock or before 8 o'clock?
This was about 5 minutes before 8 o'clock. So right, this was the first night that the mayor's curfew came down at 8. It had been a little later the night before, but this was about 7:55. I remember looking at my phone, and at basically the stroke of 8 o'clock, what happened is that a second formation of police officers came from the back, and they were charging. And I remember looking behind me and seeing this whirl of batons, and they have their batons out, and they're charging at this group from one end, and then there's this line of cops with bikes who are also pushing forward. So it becomes this like mosh pit, basically. It was very claustrophobic, and there was this like terror in a lot of people who were there, myself included. There was kind of this moment of like, how am I going to get out of this? And what's going to happen next?
Mm-hmm.
What happened next for hundreds of people is they got arrested.
And you apparently, at least according to the way you documented it in one of your pieces for Gothamist, you got out for some coincidence or stroke of luck or
a little bit of that. It was, what happened is I was struggling to get over this car, just kind of fight or flight basically. And a couple of the protesters helped me over the car. Cops saw me, initially rushed in, pushed me down, and tried to arrest me. And then one of the officers saw my press badge and, for whatever reason, decided we're not going to arrest this reporter specifically.
There are observers, official observers of these events. They were wearing green hats, and apparently they were targeted and also arrested. In fact, I think one of the videos I saw on one of your articles showed one of them saying, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm like an official person, don't arrest me," and they took her down.
Right.
And I want to establish myself. I am not one of those who says every action of the police is wrong. I understand their point of view, but this, just as I evaluated all the material I'd seen, I wasn't there, things that you wrote and the things that I read elsewhere, accounts from other people, it just seemed like it was out of control. I wish I had another way to say it, but that is what it looks like.
It was, that was the response from the people there, from people who witnessed this. This scene went on for a while, so I sort of described the lead up, but what happened is that people, were scrambling, trying to get out, and there was quite a bit of violence. You heard people screaming that there was a pregnant woman in there, and she couldn't get out. It seemed like she was having a panic attack. And there was someone else who told me that they heard the sound of bones cracking and looked over and saw an officer swinging his baton at someone. You can see in the video, one of the officers is standing on a car, smacking people with the billy club from, significantly above them. It was a level of violence that I had not seen before, and I had been out covering almost every night since the protest started, and this was 6 days in.
We had done an interview on Bronx Talk with a former police detective maybe the week after or so. And his evaluation was that it was bad timing by the city, that the city, it was right after there was looting, certainly on Fordham Road and Burnside Avenue here in the Bronx, which I know people were quite upset about. And that because they had not prevented that, the city was now reacting to that at this rally. Does that follow? Does that make sense to you? Or is it still somewhat unexplainable?
No, I think that's interesting and could certainly be part of the explanation here. Another part of it is that this is a group that it's a little bit confusing organizationally, but this protest was led by local long-term Bronx activists, people from Take Back the Bronx.
They knew them. It was clear that many of the police officers knew who they were.
Exactly. And the umbrella organization that they're a part of is called FTP. And FTP had been involved in these protests before the pandemic against subway policing. And a couple of those protests got pretty hectic, and we saw some vandalism, certainly, and you saw this mass turnstile jumping. And a lot of people felt like the police were almost caught off guard by that action, that they weren't expecting it to get sort of out of control in the way that it did. And that accounted for sort of the compensating overreaction here. I don't think that that's necessarily a justification, though.
But, I think you had asked, was it you or somebody from Gothamist had asked the mayor, he says, The mayor responded, I believe you believe that that's what happened. But we had observers for City Hall that saw a different reality. And the police commissioner said the officers use an incredible amount of restraint. This is just not credible. And that, to me, that's the most disturbing, because you need leadership to get everybody quiet. If the leadership doesn't provide some sense of accuracy or understanding, where are we at? What are we getting at? You know what I mean? To me, that was incredibly disturbing that Commissioner Shea said this was an act done like perfectly. He said we did it flawlessly. I didn't, that really disturbed me.
I appreciate you saying that, Gary. I was pretty disturbed as well that morning. I remember the mayor told me he, seemed to suggest I didn't know what I saw. But I mean, just to rattle off a few more facts about what happened here, because you mentioned this, that the legal observers, these are people who are ubiquitous at New York City protests for decades now. Their role is recognized in the patrol guide, the NYPD's patrol guide. They wear neon green hats. They're part of the National Lawyers Guild. They are known entities. They have never, I've spoken to people who've been around, who've been doing this work since the 80s. They have never before seen the NYPD systemically target legal observers, detain them, and pull them away from the scene. We've yet to get any sort of explanation for what happened there. And there were 12 or 13 legal observers who were detained. They're now filing a lawsuit.
That's what I want to get to before we run out of time, is your latest piece was the fact that they are going to file a lawsuit. The Times did a very good wrap up of what it was like when people were detained. And I know somebody who was detained. He said, I was there for 6 hours. My hands were behind my back. I mean, if you had people who had known to have committed real crimes, as it were, I don't want to say you forgive that, but then people will let go without charges. Nobody even knew what charges. That's not justice or proper policing. I don't know how else to say it.
When I was there that night, I was eavesdropping on two police officers looking out at the scene. There was multiple transport buses. They had, the people in the plastic zip ties. And I heard one of the cops say to the other something like, we don't have any room. We don't have anywhere to put these people. We're just going to have to let them go. They couldn't understand why. And there was, I believe, 250 arrests. And one other really, I think, important point here to make.
This last point, and then we're going to have to go. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, the chief of department, Terrence Monahan, was at the scene.
Who's a Bronx guy, by the way.
He was a Bronx guy. Yep. This was not just a bunch of rogue cops, acting on a whim. This was a planned operation. They knew what they were doing, and we've yet to sort of get any sort of explanation for why they chose to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Listen, Jake, there's a lot of talk about media and the importance of media and why do we need media. And we need you, man. And we really appreciate what you did. And I know you're going to follow this story. Let's just keep telling it. Let's tell it accurately. I don't know what else to tell you. It's still an open-ended question. And again, thank you for your great work. And my friends at Gothamist, we really appreciate everything you do. We'll have you back as you keep going. We do appreciate your reporting on this. Jake Offenhartz from Gothamist, please check him out. You can Google his name. You can look at all the work. And then let's go on. We really appreciate your time today on the Bronx Buzz.
Thanks, Gary.
Great. We're going to take a short break and change gears totally. We're going to talk about one of the best Bronx artists, and you're going to get to see his work in a whole new way. Don't go away. More Bronx Buzz coming up. welcome back to the Bronx Buzz. I am very excited about this segment because it's a friend and also maybe one of the best artists in the Bronx. I know he never likes to characterize artists in that way, but
I didn't say it.
I said it, and we really have always appreciated Daniel Hauben's work. And congratulations on the new website. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Gary. Great to be here.
So let's just talk about an artist with a website. Now, you had a website. What was the idea behind building the new DanielHauben.com?
My last website was created like in the Stone Age. And so everything about my new website is, 2.0. It's, the quality of the images, the digital photographs is exponentially greater. The kind of camera we're using. Now I have the photographer and lighting expert extraordinaire, Eddie Talwar, photographing all my work for me. That's larger than a certain size. Under a certain size, it's being scanned on a museum quality flatbed scanner. So we start with beautiful images, much better than, what the old site was all derived from slides. And, then the design of the website is catered now to work on all your media devices. The old website was not configured in that way. That's vital. In fact, even since I started creating this new website, things have shifted. And now today people are creating them for the phone first.
Wow.
Because more people are viewing on the phone. So there's all these shifts. Then comes the plugins, the ability to, my work is made to be seen, I believe, as a whole, but then in, close up in all the details, because I'm a detail guy. And we can do that on this website where you can, look at the whole thing and then zoom in, move around, and not lose any, clarity or speed.
Detail. Yeah, let me ask you this. I'm always curious about, as you know, the artist's muse. When you look at that now, looking at it through this prism, as opposed to the studio, as opposed to galleries, did you learn anything new about your work? Did you perceive your work differently to see how it comes across in this high-tech digital HD way?
Well,
I
don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I perceive the work differently, but I perceive how others perceive my work differently, because I've been doing Zoom web tours with selected groups. The first trial group was with 30 family members. I figured you can't really go wrong with them.
Yeah, right.
What the feedback that I got was that people especially liked seeing the work and hearing my voice telling the stories related to that work. So this new website is a work in progress. From that idea, Judy and I have now made a whole bunch of little videos of me talking in front of specific paintings about those paintings, and we will have a select number of pieces on the website that it'll say, to learn more about this piece, this painting, click here, and then a little video of me talking will come up. So we're living in a very, a whole different, people are, videos are where it's at right now on, social media or whatever, and we're trying to, roll with it all, even at this, later stage in one's life and one's career.
There is a video that leads the website, and I realize there's no real audio on there, so we can roll the video. And our mutual friend Adiana Rivera did a beautiful job. So we can roll that while we're still talking.
Okay, that's cool.
What I like about it is it starts off showing that detail, which has really been the essence of Danny Hauben's work. And then, of course, it widens up and you see it in context. It's a very simple video, but I think very effective.
All in 54 seconds. So, you could say a lot, and that was just a thought I had, and she so beautifully put that together. And I have gotten a lot of nice feedback because I also didn't want my site to look like every other site. A lot of sites are geared to employ the latest, techniques for selling and all this stuff. It's not really where I'm coming from. I want my work to come through, and my shtick to come through. People could look that word up, but it was so important to me to have each part of the website, be attended to individually.
I, as you know, have enjoyed your artwork, and people in the Bronx have enjoyed it. I mean, there's an awards page, and we're not going to have time to get to everything. But the Arthur Avenue Market, for example. I mean, there are sections here. One is they call it monumentals, and the Arthur Avenue Market. That was an experience, right? That was more than just you saying, "Oh, I'm going to paint this." Just talk about it while we even look at the
well, all the work, especially that I do on location, are experiences, and this was a wonderful one. This was in the December, I believe, of 2012, and Paul and Anthony Ramirez were thinking of opening the Bronx Beer Hall, but as an experiment, they did a pop-up shop that leading up to Christmas holidays in the market. And they invited me to come and paint while they were doing their thing. And so I spent a good chunk of the month there doing that painting. It started out, as many of my pieces do, as one panel, the center section with the guy playing piano, and then the guy, the people at Mike's, meets on the right said, "What are we, chopped liver?" Sorry.
Literally.
Anyway, literally. So I included the two sections, and that was that. I'm glad you brought that piece up in particular, because that was a very special and personal experience for me, because my father he and his brothers worked for their father, who had a push cart on the Lower East Side, and they were amongst all of the push cart people in New York who, under LaGuardia's regime, had to relocate into these indoor markets around the city. And that is the time in which this Arthur Avenue Market was created in 78 years ago, whatever it was.
So your work there had, in addition, I mean, all of your work has a personal point of view. We're not going to have time to run through everything. There are landscapes there. There are what he calls enchanted landscapes. There are surreal things. By the way, I love that urban undulations, because it reminds me of M.C. Escher. That's not an Escher type concept. I don't know what is. But what I want to focus on, and this is what in fact, I have a couple hanging in my bedroom, and that is cityscapes. And that view off of Orloff Terrace, York Terrace, looking over the Bronx, I mean, it's just spectacular. Talk about, which I've asked you only 1,000 times, painting the Bronx, and as opposed to a photograph, what does the painting do, and what do you try to do with a painting of a Bronx landscape?
Well, I purposely don't use photographs for any of my work, except for specific references for, certain things, like in the Arthur Avenue Market, the meat guys, I wanted to get like a specific face or something, so I'll take some photographs. But with, in my urban pieces, whether they be from, vantage points from rooftops or terraces or windows or street scenes, you can't replace the experience of being on a location over an extended period of time, where all kinds of things are changing, and you're making all these decisions in the moment. What lighting conditions that exist only at a certain time during the day, and what they evoke, and how to be like right on the moment there. And in the course of doing these pieces, that especially like the larger piece reflecting on the familiar, my largest 21-foot painting of Kingsbridge Heights from my terrace, that was like months of being on the terrace and kind of absorbing the environment in a much more in-depth way. That a photograph is like, it has limited information, and I'm into
all right, so we're going to talk. We have a minute or two left. I want you to tell me a story that you once told me, and I forgot the details.
Okay.
And while you do that, Rebecca's going to put up all different pictures.
Okay.
You told me the story that you had painted something, I think it was at a deli. And then when you went back, and the guy, so I don't want to give the punchline away. So Rebecca will put, our wonderful producer Rebecca will put up the paintings of other stuff, but I want you to tell us the story.
Okay, the painting is called Superette. And it was at my most local grocery store right on the corner. And I had, the proprietor saw me working on it and bought the piece and hung it up, framed it and hung it up in the store. My friend Peter was visiting from Massachusetts, and he went to get some beers at the Superette, and I hadn't told him my work was there, but he, of course, knew it was mine. He's looking at it. The proprietor said, "You like that painting?" And Peter said, "Yeah, it's a beautiful work." He said, and the guy said, "Well, my son did that." It's another goofy. So yeah, there's a section of my website called Inches from My Easel, where I tell a lot of these interesting snippets of stories of working 40 plus years in the Bronx, on the streets, everywhere.
DanielHauben.com. Visit it. Enjoy the work. If you want to purchase one, he probably wouldn't say no. But listen, he's been shown at Bronx Community College. They got the whole library there. Has got Danny's work. You could go to subway stations. You could see that. And then there's there's landscapes of other places. DanielHauben.com. I guess that's your new name.
I'll take it, I guess.
Listen, Danny, thank you. I know you're not stopping. You're still painting, right?
I'm painting. I mean, I just had a carpal tunnel surgery last week. That's why I wasn't on last week, but I'm coming back. I got plenty to say, and thank you, Gary. Really, really appreciate it.
Great. To be friends with an artist of that caliber is really a joy for me. Thank you so much, Dan Hauben. Folks, very important show, and we hope you enjoyed it. We'll do more Bronx Buzz next week. This week on Bronx Talk, a very, very, very interesting show. We're going to talk about hunger in the Bronx. It's there, and we're going to talk about it. We'll see you. Good night.